The HT10 AilyBuds Pro Plus is a brand new semi-in-ear release from QCY. They're jam-packed full of impressive features like multipoint and high-res audio courtesy of the LDAC codec. But more intriguingly, you've got AI adaptive audio, which uses sensors and software to adjust the EQ based on your surroundings. And adaptive active noise cancellation, something that you don't normally see on earbuds without a silicone tip. And despite that impressive list of features, you can pick these up for under 25 quid from the QCY store on AliExpress. And considering the HT05 was my budget bud of 2023, the HT10 is a release I was really excited about. As always, you're going to see fit and stability tests, get frequency response measurements, and also be able to hear what the buds sound like for yourself, courtesy of a binaural sample. You're also going to hear how the active noise cancellation performs in comparison with one of their other products, the HT05, and hear real life call samples in 2 busy locations. Now, despite QCY not really being a household name outside China, they're in fact the 5th biggest manufacturer of earbuds in the world. But the HT10 is the first time I think it's fair to say that the unboxing experience has really felt quite professional. Their charge case is lightweight, it's attractive, and it's super portable. This is a case that's ideal for just popping even in your trouser pocket. It's not going to weigh you down, you're not going to feel like it's there because of its slimline profile. But it's also well built as well, much more so than some of QCY's previous releases. Take the hinge for example, and you can see there that it's not snapping shut in the wind or anything like that. There's a good friction to it. The finish on it looks a lot more premium than most of their previous releases as well. I don't think this will scuff up in your pocket as badly as the matte black finish on the majority of their previous TWS. The only minor complaint from a usability perspective is the buds are very slippy and the case is quite small and delicate. The magnets are quite strong as well, so sometimes getting the buds in and out can be a little bit of an ordeal. There's a battery indicator on the front, although it doesn't really give you any indication of how much is remaining. It turns red while it's charging and then goes back to white once it's finished. On the bottom there's a USB-C socket and a reset and pairing button. And the case has a feature called one-click device switching, where holding that button down for 3 seconds while the case is open will allow you to easily connect to a previously connected device rather than having to repair it all over again. And whilst this is theoretically a useful feature, if you're using multi-point connectivity, i.e. the ability to connect to 2 devices simultaneously, then the feature is null and void, you can't actually use it. As well, I found that as soon as you close the case and then tried using it again, say an hour later, you'd have to repair the device again, so it actually didn't save you any time in the long run. Multipoint though does work really well. You'll find it in the settings section of the QCY app, and once you've toggled dual device connection, if it's a device that you've paired to previously, you can just go in and press connect, and there you go, you'll be connected to both devices at the same time. If it isn't, then it's a bit of a faff. You have to put it back into pairing mode by turning Bluetooth off on your primary device, then connect on the secondary, and then when you switch Bluetooth back on your primary device, then it will connect to that one as well. If you're paying attention there, you'll have seen the LDAC switches off when you use multipoint because you can't use those 2 features together. To move from one device to another, you have to press pause on whatever it is that's playing, and it takes around 3 seconds to switch. Onto the design, I think this does really stand out as one of QCY's better looking earbuds. The stems have a kind of metallic mirrored finish, with the touch control panel being towards the top. The openings on the flip side are a similar size to the Apple AirPod Gen 3, and they measure slightly shorter than the True-Free T3 at around 31mm. One of the reasons why consumers select semi-in-ear buds over in-ear buds is comfort. They can be used for prolonged periods of time without you having that invasive feeling of a silicone tip stuffed into your ear canal. Personally, I'm a big fan of this style, and after a little bit of adjustment, I found the HT10 super comfortable. To get them to stay in my ears consistently though, I had to wear them in this kind of diagonal sort of way. It looks a bit unorthodox, but this is exactly how QCY recommend you to wear them in the manual. Once I got this right, they did stay put while I was out walking. You can see how confident I was of them staying in my ears. I tested them out on a railway bridge here and they really weren't going to fall out. They're IPX5 sweat and water resistant, so you can wear them outdoors or in the gym without any worries, and I had no issues with stability either when doing weights and bench work. Cardio is a different story though. They failed the 100 jumping jack test, only lasting just 7, so I can't recommend them for that. The semi-in-ear style of earbud has many benefits, but stability definitely isn't one of them, certainly for exercises like jumping jacks, because you don't have that seal that you have on in-ear buds, and it's the seal really which is giving you traction inside your ear. This certainly isn't a problem exclusive to the HT10 though, more a consequence of the form factor. For rigorous exercise, something like the HT05 is going to stay in your ears much more consistently, or better still, an open ear air conduction style sports wearable. Check out my playlist, link is above, for plenty of good examples of those. While stability has never really been one of the big benefits of semi-in earbuds, situational awareness certainly has. Many users have selected this style of earbud for the ability to hear everything that's going on around them without having to reach for the controls and activate transparency mode. And given their physical constraints as well, it's really surprised me, this growing trend of adding active noise cancellation into semi-in ears, especially as all the ones I've tested have been pretty ineffective. On the HT10 however, I was quite surprised at how effective it was, and I've included a binaural sample here comparing it to the HT05 so you can hear for yourself how well it worked at being able to reduce those ambient sounds in this scene, a busy coffee shop. So as you heard there, actually a quite respectable performance when it comes to active noise cancellation. You don't have any other settings, it's just on or off, and annoyingly it's not on by default, so every time you take the buds out of the case you have to switch them on by holding down the right side for a couple of seconds or activating it through the app. As you heard in that coffee shop scene there, voices were still pretty audible, although not as sharp, but the overall noise level was just brought down enough that you can maybe concentrate on doing some work, or certainly when you've got music playing, it does have a reasonable effect at removing those sounds around you. When you're out and about, when you're walking down the street, engine noises are reduced quite considerably, but wind noise would still come through a little bit, and that's to be expected, again due to the shape, the lack of seal, and the wind is going to bounce back off the plastic chassis of the earbud itself. They do have adaptive wind noise cancellation, but I didn't find it to be particularly effective. It's perhaps a little bit unfair to compare it to something like the HT05, which has a seal and is able to give you passive noise isolation, but I thought it was worth showing you that actually the difference isn't as huge as you would expect, and its performance compared to some of its peers, the likes of the SoundPEATS Air 4, is very good. I still think it's better to see active noise cancellation on the HT10 and any buds of this style as an added bonus rather than a prerequisite. With no passive isolation, no strength levels, no transparency mode and no wind noise reduction mode, it's quite some way from what you would get with an in-ear option, so it's very important to set your expectations accordingly, but I think QCY have done a very good job. Next we're going to have a listen to their call quality, and that's exactly what you can hear now in a very quiet room where you've got absolutely no ambient sounds going on around you. This is how you can expect your voice to be conveyed, but more importantly, how does the HT10 sound in real life? We've got two samples coming up now, one in a busy outdoor scene and one in a busy indoor scene, the usual coffee shop here in the UK. So in the first of the two real life tests, we are assessing how the QCY HT10 sounds on your calls, and what we're trying to simulate here is the daily commute. It's a common use case for purchasers of PWS, so they might want to make or take a call when they're walking to work, school, college, etc. And we've got a mixture of the typical sounds that you'll encounter when you're on that call. So there's a little bit of wind noise right at the beginning. Now we've got quite a bit of traffic noise coming through as well.
because I am actually doing that walk from the train station into the town centre. So this is how you can expect it to perform on a call, and there's a little bit of wind coming through again there, so very helpful. Yeah, this is how you can expect it to perform to perform on your outdoor calls. So we're testing the indoor call quality in a busy indoor scene here in a coffee shop for the QCY HT10. These are a new release from QCY. If you're using the buds in a busy indoor environment, a coffee shop like this, to do a presentation or make a work call, or busy school or college corridor, something like that, then this is how you can expect the HT10 to perform.
As you'll have heard on the outdoor scene, it reduced most of the ambient sounds pretty well. Engines pretty much disappeared altogether, although wind noise, a real Achilles heel for wireless earbuds, was still very apparent. As soon as you had a gust come through, it really did struggle to cope with that. In the indoor scene, it did reduce quite a few of the sounds, although again the indistinct chatter was still there, you could still hear it. It elevated your voice enough that you could be clear and coherent, but it does make your voice sound a little bit digitized. Indoors, where you reduce all the ambient sounds around you, it performed perfectly adequately. So as long as you're using the mic in those kind of scenarios and your expectations aren't too high, I think it does a pretty decent job. What about the audio? Well, first we're going to play you a binaural sample so you can hear that sound signature for yourself. Do make sure you're wearing headphones for this bit for the best effect. So as you heard there, the HT10 AilyBuds Pro Plus have a very clean and well-defined sound signature that works well across most music styles, and it has a really interesting feature here called AI Adaptive EQ, where the HT10 uses wear detection sensors to detect the environmental sound setting that's going on around you and then adjust the EQ accordingly. However, I wouldn't really call it adaptive because it only makes a single point assessment at the time that you activate it, which is done through the app. It also gives you an indication of how well the buds are sitting in your ears, which I think is a nice added bonus. You also get a bunch of presets, although none of those are particularly great, and a custom EQ, which is really handy. But if you're one of those users that just likes to stick the earbuds in your ears and not mess around with the EQ, I feel that adaptive EQ setting will be really useful for you, and from my perspective at least, it definitely optimized that sound. Much of the focus with semi-in earbuds is getting good definition to the trebles without sounding too tinny or too piercing, and I think QCY does definitely achieve this here. When it comes to the lower frequencies, as you heard, it's some way short of what you're getting on the HT05. That said, when you have active noise cancellation and adaptive EQ both switched on, the mid-bass presence is quite good, even though there's not a great deal of sub-bass. It's certainly enough, and compared with other semi-in earbuds, which often have this problem of conveying bass in an appropriately punchy way, I think it's job well done here. Problem is, when you switch active noise cancellation off, you completely lose that bass response, and it disappears even further if you switch adaptive EQ off. I found for the best performance, leave both of these two settings on, and the bass response is good enough. It's certainly not going to satisfy bass heads, but for casual listening, for most users, I think you'll probably find it acceptable. The mid-range is quite musical, with instruments and vocals having a slightly lighter note weight. There's a nice horizontal staging to the HT10, where it gives you a fairly immersive sort of sound, as you would expect with semi-open earbuds. However, instrument separation isn't quite as well defined as I would hope, particularly for a set of buds that are supporting the LDAC codec. It wasn't always easy, particularly in that mid-bass region, to be able to place your guitars, strings and any other instruments in the arrangement. However, for less complex sorts of genres and tracks, they perform absolutely fine. The sound signature is actually quite similar to the SoundPEATS Air 4, which cost double the price. The SoundPEATS Air 4 and the Air 3 before that were the first semi-in-ears to really give you a decent bass response at a budget price, but the QCY HT10 definitely punches its weight with both of them. It also has a number of features that the SoundPEATS doesn't have, like the ability to balance your channels, a built-in Find My Headset feature, as well as the ability to power off after a certain period of time. Both models have gaming mode, which reduces the latency when you're doing casual gaming or watching videos. For me, it was slightly more effective on the SoundPEATS. Sleeping mode turns your touch controls off, which you can also do on the Air 4, but one thing you can't do is change the button configuration. That's something that you've been able to do with QCY buds on the other hand for as long as I can remember, and you don't have too many restrictions either. You can change single tap, which again you can't do on a lot of other budget buds. You can change double tap and also triple tap. The only thing you can't change is tap and hold. For the left bud, this is always going to be changing it to gaming mode, and on the right bud, that's toggling your active noise cancellation mode. You've heard me talk a lot about active noise cancellation and how indispensable it is on this model, but it does have one big drawback, and that is on the battery life. QCY advertised 5 hours battery life on a single charge, dropping to 4 hours with active noise cancellation on. Unfortunately, I found this could drop as low as 3.5 hours, and potentially even less if you were to make and take a fair number of calls during that time. As far as I can tell, there's no quick charge feature either, which would have been very welcome. It isn't unusual for semi-in earbuds to have a shorter battery life than in earbuds due to the larger drivers, and it is comparable to what you get on the SoundPEATS Air 4, but even so, it's still a little bit of a disappointment, and that might be a deal breaker to some. The slightly disappointing battery life aside, if you're one of those people that prefer your earbuds more in the style of the original Apple AirPods, then I don't think you're going to be disappointed with the HT10. As you heard, the sound is decent, they perform reasonably well on calls, and whilst active noise cancellation in this form factor is usually a bit of a gimmick, I found it actually worked pretty well at reducing those sounds around you and giving you a more pleasant experience. With good ergonomics, a portable case and customizable touch controls, there's a lot to like about the HT10, not least the price tag. I picked these up for 25 quid. That's nearly half the price that you'd pay here in the UK for the SoundPEATS Air 4. And this is really indicative of QCY's recent releases, giving you a lot of value for money for not a lot of cash. If you enjoyed the review, do give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you own the HT10, I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching. It's ReganCipher signing off.